what most of the 12,000 people in the stadium have come to see. The men's 100-metre final. Donaldson, the New Zealander, in 1. Whitnish in lane 2. In fact, they're the finalists there. I can give you the lane draw now. Dean Capobianco, in fact, will be in 1. Baxter will be in 2. Henderson 3. Brimacon 4. Carl Lewis will be in 5. Patrick Stevens in 6. Patrick Johnson in 7. There it is now. Chris Donaldson in 8 and Ryan Whitnish in 9. But all eyes will be on Carl Lewis. And there's certainly an air of anticipation here in the stadium. And Steve, he was disappointing in New Zealand. He finished 7th, ran about 10.70. There's the great man there, 9-time Olympic gold medalist, twice world record holder over this distance. Been involved in all the most famous runs.
The greatest athlete of our time. You've got to admit, in my era, there's been no greater than Carl Lewis, and he's here in Australia. And I'm sure that 11,963 people have come to see him run tonight.
Look at
Let's
that
hope he puts
best
on a show.
Yeah, 9.86, the personal best.
What's he do? He's got to lift himself a bit after New Zealand. We saw the run there wasn't all that, wasn't the Carl Lewis we know, but he is a great big-time performer, and I'm sure he'll acquit himself a lot better here tonight. He's got some great... This is a terrific event. We're very even across the heat, so he won't have it on his own, that's for sure. You can guarantee this will be a very close and exciting race, and let's hope that Carl's up there with them.
Gentlemen, just about this young fellow, Patrick Johnson. I mean, 6 months ago, to suggest to him that he would have been running in a major race at a GP track meet against Carl Lewis is quite incredible. And here he is this evening against King Carl, Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, well, he certainly couldn't believe it himself. In fact, this time last year he was playing touch rugby, as we see Paul Henderson and Steve Brimacombe. Brimmer just missing out on the Olympic final. In fact, Patrick Stevens, who we'll see a little bit later. As Carl shakes hands with Brimmer, that'll be a big thrill for you, Steve Brimacombe, whenever the great man shakes your hand. But Patrick Johnson, as we look at Lewis, look at that number. It's a gold number 9. He's the only one in this field certainly wearing a gold number, signifying the 9 Olympic gold medals that the great man has won. There's Patrick Stevens. We talked about Brimacombe and Stevens. They've got a bit of a rivalry. It was this man, the Belgian, that took Brimmer's place in the 200-metre final in Atlanta. Brimmer finishing 9th. And there's Johnson. 10.67 is his best time legally. Ran 10.27 in Perth, ran 10.31 during the week in Canberra. Spent the first 16 years of his life on a boat. Used to dive off to go to school. There's Donaldson, the New Zealander. Great thrill for all of these people. Good opportunity here. Make yourself famous, fellas. Beat the king. Ryan Whitnish ran well in New Zealand. But just getting back to Patrick Johnson, he this time last year was playing touch rugby. He rejected some offers for Super League. They wanted him to play at either the Cowboys up in Queensland or the Raiders. They didn't matter which. He decided that he wanted to stay with track and field. They offered him a scholarship at the AIS in Canberra, which he accepted. As we welcome Melinda Gainsford-Taylor to the microphone. Welcome, Mel. You've had a bit of a warm down. How are you feeling?
Hi, Dave. Not too bad. A bit disappointed with the run, but hey, got to start somewhere.
OK, we'll come back and talk to Melinda about this race and her race in detail in a moment, but they're about to be called to the blocks now for the feature event, men's 100 metres, featuring King Carl Lewis. Steve Brimacombe being introduced now, and as David's already indicated to you, a thrill of a lifetime for him, with Carl Lewis offering his hand prior to the start of this race.
Well, Brimmer's been in this sort of situation before, so he won't be phased. So we just pause to hear the reaction for the king. Quiet, please. No, Carl, you're the star of the show and people can clap for as long as they like. It must be a great thrill for him on a farewell tour of the world. Patrick Stevens, Olympic finalist in the 200 metres in Atlanta. One of the favourites going in here. Ran a great heat earlier in the day. And Melinda, what's going through these athletes' minds? Patrick Johnson, you saw him in Perth during last week. Fantastic talent.
He's a great talent. I remember him saying that coming up to this race that he was hoping to get through the heats and to get in the final. And here he is today, and it's great to be in his position because he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And first major race, and he's against Carl Lewis.
Great atmosphere here in Sydney. 12,000 spectators come to watch this man here with the gold number 9. quiet now. 9 Olympic gold medals for Carl Lewis.
Being called to the blocks for the 100 metres. Capobianco, Baxter, Henderson, Brimacombe, Lewis, Patrick Stevens from Belgium, Patrick Johnson, Australia, Donaldson, New Zealand, Whitnish, Australia. An air of expectation here at the Homebush Stadium. Away they go, Lewis away only fairly, Baxter got away well, so did Capobianco, and Johnson through the centre, and on the outside Whitnish is going quickly, and now Brimacombe and Henderson. Brimacombe streaming to the lead, Brimacombe wins, it's tight for second and third, Brimacombe first, I think Donaldson second, just in front of either Whitnish, Stevens and Carl Lewis just in behind them, but all honours with Steve Brimacombe.
Great run for Brimacombe, a little bit slower than the heat this morning. He ran 10.27 to win that heat, 10.43 there. Carl Lewis certainly ran a much improved race from what we saw in New Zealand. And this is what he said he came to Australia to do, to slap fires with the fans. He goes immediately to the fence. There's a bit of a media scrum. This poor man, Steve Brimacombe's been forgotten. He shouldn't be, because it was a great run from Steve Brimacombe, the Queenslander. He raced against Lewis in Perth, or in New Zealand, I should say, last Friday. But it was an improved run for Lewis, Melinda. He looked pretty shoddy in New Zealand, but it was a much better run there tonight.
He was. He was actually up there for the first 50 with the guys, but then they sort of pulled away from him. But well done to Steve. I mean, he didn't run too well in Canberra, if I remember correctly, so his few races has been agreeing with him.
Well, it was a good run also from Ryan Whitnish as we go to the replay. He's on our outside. He got a great start. So did Patrick Johnson. The start was the worry for him. He's in the red, 3 from the left. Lewis is with them at this stage. Henderson on Brimacombe's inside. He's up there at this stage too, but this is the strong part of Brimacombe's race. The 200-metre speed coming through. He really does lift in the final 20 metres. He goes to the line here. There's not much in it, but a clear victory for Brimacombe. Whitnish and Donaldson, there's not much between those two. And let's have a look now. Patrick Stevens was perhaps a little bit disappointing, but pretty even after 20 metres. And Lewis, the trademark finishing speed of the King, not quite there.
When Brimacombe went, it was Henderson who went with him, and then on the outside, Donaldson and Whitnish. Now, they've hit the line locked together. You can see Lewis finishing in about 6th position, and Johnson has finished probably 5th just behind Patrick Stevens. So a big effort by the youngster in his first big race, and I think that Donaldson will get second, looking at that replay, just in front of Ryan Whitnish, but the winner is Steve Brimacombe.
Here's the King in isolation. Well, the time may not be as fast, but the style remains the same. He's been likened to Muhammad Ali, smooth as silk. There's not a better technician in world sprinting than this man. 9.86, the personal best time. Steve Brimacombe just on his outside. A great run from him, but great to see Carl Lewis finally run here. He'll be a little bit disappointed with that placing, but I'm sure the man who won the race won't be disappointed. He's with Amanda to pledge. Steve Brimacombe, a fantastic run, and all honours to you.
Yeah, Steve, all honest to you. Of course, at the moment, you're being a little bit upstaged, but I guess you can understand that you've got a big smile on your face anyway. You don't mind, do you?
No, I don't mind at all.
That must have been pretty satisfying, a great run.
I'm going to do a lap of honour with him, but I don't think I will. But what's the point? No, it's really good to race him, you know. Obviously, he's one of the greatest athletes that's ever run. It's in his last year. I know he's not in the best form, but it's still good to be able to be involved in something as good as that.
Particularly, and what about, I mean, a huge crowd here tonight. It's so good to see in Sydney a crowd like this come to watch the world's best or Australia's world-class athletes in action. Does that really lift you? Do you feel that, the anticipation of the crowd?
Absolutely. I mean, that really makes them, you know. I was saying in Canberra the other week there was a fair crowd there, but it just felt like an interclub meet, you know. But this is sort of up there ranking with the you know, the meets in Europe, and it's really exciting. You get this sort of thing happening all the time, and the performances are going to lift.
Steve Brimacombe, a terrific win.
Thank you very much.
Well, Melinda Gaines for Tully, you were down there a little bit earlier. Does it feel like those big meets in Europe? You've been to all the big ones. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels great, Dave. Actually, when I turned out tonight, I was very surprised to see the crowd, and it's great to have them here. And you know, it's pretty hard for me tonight because it's been 2 years competing and domestically, and you know, to come out and have a crowd and people cheering your name, I'm not quite used to that, especially after being in Europe, but it's fantastic out there.
Have a look at these scenes. It's like a scene at the Sydney Football Stadium or the MCG in Melbourne with the victors. In fact, although Lewis not the victor here, but certainly the hero for the people here in Homebush tonight. And won't they take away a memory? They can say to their children that they've seen and touched the King.
He doesn't have to do this. This is quite remarkable that he would take the time. It's all right to run around the perimeter of the track. I know he's probably finished 6th or 7th, but to actually stop and exchange handshakes and pleasantries with the younger members of the crowd and some older members as well, it's a mark of what is a great man and a great athlete. He certainly is affording the Australians much more time than perhaps he's entitled to, and that's wonderful.
Well, he said that as we look at the result, he said that he wanted to do that. That was part of his farewell tour. And there he is in 7th place, tying with Dean Capobianco. But Brimacombe, the winner, 10.37. Well, 10.43 was on the clock, so we'll be happy with 10.37. Whitnish and Donaldson, they couldn't split them in second. Paul Henderson, Patrick Stevens, 10.51. Patrick Johnson, I think, shouldn't be too disappointed with that run, 10.52. Carl Lewis, 10.56. So an improvement on what he did in New Zealand last Friday night. Not 9.86, but still a good run. Capobianco and David Baxter will be back after the break from the Optus